Your toxic job is trying to destroy you. The dread hits the moment you open your eyes in the morning. The anxiety stalks you all day long, and it's already drained you emotionally, psychologically, and physically. I'm a criminologist, and I've analyzed more than 4,000 toxic workplaces, and I identified exactly what separates the people that are consumed by them from the people who don't give an F. It's the Unbothered Protocol, 6 pieces that make you untouchable in your toxic job. The first piece is foundational, but most people ignore it entirely. But without it, none of the other pieces are going to fit together. The only reason why your job is toxic is because you care. You care about your work, you care about what people think about you at work, and you care about being valued. That isn't a personal failing, it's been socially engineered. The toxic workplace didn't make you care this much, you already did. And I know because it happened to me. My toxic job put me in the hospital. I was actively being recruited for other executive positions at the exact same time. And I was lucky, I had the financial runway to quit at any moment, but I still couldn't leave. Not because I needed the job, but because I needed what the job made me. A startup executive, a working mom, someone who had it all figured out. I felt like without my job, I had no value. That's not a rational decision. That's what happens when your identity lives inside of a job title. And when I was finally let go, I realized that I had been building on sand the whole entire time. That's what the system does. It doesn't just consume your time and your energy, it becomes a thing that you think you are. Like, you should probably work your ass off like a Kardashian, and if you don't deserve anything.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
But you are not your job. You were a whole person before they got their hands on you, and you will be again. You have identities beyond work. Friend, partner, parent, Pilates princess. You are not a productivity engine with a pulse. Your worth is not something that they can revoke, no matter how hard they try to brainwash you to believe that they can. Knowing that and feeling it in your bones is the first piece of power to become unbothered in a toxic workplace. The next one is going to alter your brain chemistry. And the angrier you get when I tell you this one, the more you need this piece. You are not a victim of your toxic job. When you are in a toxic workplace, you are forced into the victim mental model. They need you to stay in the self-defeating mental model because as long as you're in it, there's nothing that you can do to stop them. Now, as a criminologist, I need to distinguish between two very different things. You can be victimized without becoming a victim. Victimization is something that happens to you. Victim is something that you need to become. There's a difference, and that difference is everything. You are being victimized in a toxic work environment. You are targeted by toxic coworkers and bosses. They sabotage your work, undermine your abilities, damage your reputation, and actively try to destroy your career. This is real, and I need to be clear, you have zero control over this. You do not control the toxic people at work, but they control you when you become a victim. When you have a victim mindset, you are helpless, powerless, and stuck. And when you're powerless, you are defenseless. But I want you to think about it like this. If someone stole your wallet, you wouldn't just shrug your shoulders and say, "There's nothing I can do," while they went on a shopping spree on your dime. You would cancel your credit card, contest charges, and monitor your credit. You would also take steps to prevent further victimization, not submit to a victim mental model. This is what you need to do in a toxic work environment. And it's exactly what my client Vivian did. Vivian works in healthcare, which basically has toxicity embedded into the culture, so it wasn't new to her. But she started a job where she had a few level 10 toxic coworkers. You know, the insidious kind, who make up rumors, set you up to fail when the stakes are high, and assemble a toxic group against you so that you are totally isolated. Vivian felt like she was back in middle school being bullied by a group of mean girls, not going to work in a professional job. When Vivian came to me, she wanted to learn how to shut down her toxic coworkers, but the first thing that she had to do was to alter her mental model because she had fallen into a victim mental model. She felt like there was nothing she could do about being targeted, and she was terrified that they would sabotage her, putting both her and patient care at risk. If she didn't upgrade her mental model, none of the other pieces were going to fit. So the very first thing that I had her do was switch from victim to victor. When she did this, she was shocked by the immediate and immense difference that it made. The toxic workplace system depends on you not realizing that you have any power in it. They distort reality to weaponize your intelligence, your awareness, and your accountability against you. In Vivian's case, the main thing that her coworkers were doing was gossiping and making intentional miscommunications. And those miscommunications were the most worrying because obviously working in healthcare, the stakes are very high. This kept Vivian constantly on edge. She could make an error based on having incorrect information. situation, and that would have dire consequences. This was a victim mentality. The victor version was simple. If her coworker's bad behavior had any consequence on patient care, they could be reported and have their license revoked. Now, I don't know about you, but in my opinion, if it came to that, they deserve that consequence. The toxic workplace system wants you to believe that your strengths are weaknesses, that you have no power and no leverage, and that you're helpless. But none of that is true. When you make this shift, it's invisible. But people are gonna feel it. It's going to position you as a hostile target to toxic people, which we'll talk more about later. The easiest way to put this piece in place is a simple declaration. I am not a victim of my toxic job. In fact, I want you to make that proclamation right now in the comments. When you put that out into the world, it immediately starts to become your reality, because now you're someone who sees through the toxic workplace system. Now, you're 2 pieces into the Unbothered Protocol. You know why you care, and you've made the shift from victim to victor. The toxic workplace system has already lost 2 of its most powerful weapons against you. Now, you're going to take something else away from it entirely, right now, without permission or anyone even realizing it. Every minute that you stay cognitively invested in your toxic job is another minute that the toxic workplace system wins. It will consume your evenings, your thoughts, your sleep. I remember gasping awake when I had doom dreams about my toxic job. That's why you need to cognitive quit your job. Now, I don't want you getting this confused with quiet quitting, because quiet quitting is about doing the bare minimum. Maybe you do put in less effort, but you're still being tortured by your toxic workplace. It's giving up instead of cognitively disinvesting. Cognitive quitting is 10 times more powerful because it's not about your effort. It's about the emotional fuel that the toxic workplace system depends on to operate. The best part is that cognitive quitting requires no prep, has no risk, and is available to everyone. It's an internal shift. It doesn't change how you do your job. It changes how the toxic work environment affects you and your self-esteem. And cognitive quitting is backed up by research. It's a form of psychological detachment, which has proven to be one of the best protective mechanisms against high-stress environments like a toxic workplace. You have to care to be harmed. When you detach, you become unbothered. This is so important that I am going to repeat myself. You have to care to be harmed, which means the moment that you stop caring, they lose, not eventually, immediately. When you cognitively quit, it doesn't change how you show up at work. It alters how you internalize it. You can continue to be passionate about your job, support your customers, create products, whatever it is that you do, without giving an F about the drama, the BS, and the gossip. This was key for Vivian. Quiet quitting was never an option for her. Her patients would have been the ones to suffer for it, not her coworkers. But when she cognitively quit, she mentally resigned from the drama that her toxic coworkers thrived on, the stress that they tried to create, and the incompetent leadership that refused to do a thing about it. Think of it like this. If your bank constantly took unreasonable fees, had technical issues that impacted your money, and made you jump through hoops in order to prove yourself every time that they made a mistake, you would withdraw all your money to protect it, right? Cognitive quitting is the emotional equivalent of taking your money elsewhere. This piece is important because it holds together your awareness of how the toxic workplace system exploits you and your updated mental model. Without it, it's easy for the toxic workplace system to emotionally manipulate you into reinvesting. But this next piece is going to keep your cognitive currency safe for good. You need to build an emotional firewall. Toxic work cultures are inherently manipulative. They manufacture drama, fake urgency, and they make you doubt yourself instead of them. The emotional firewall is the filter that blocks out all the noise that the toxic workplace system creates. Think of it like a bouncer in your brain who is very picky about who gets into the club. That bouncer knows what's important and what isn't, what criticism is valid, and who has legitimate authority and who doesn't. Most of what your toxic workplace throws at you does not deserve entry. Like the manufactured urgency at 4:55 on a Friday, the passive-aggressive email copied to your boss, the meeting that could have been a text. None of it is as important as they need you to think that it is. The bouncer knows that, and now, so do you. Vivian's life got a lot easier and a lot less stressful when she set up her emotional firewall. She knew that her toxic coworkers were going to be gossiping behind her back, judging her. And it bothered her until she did this. Because once she had her emotional firewall, they could say whatever they wanted. because their judgment was as relevant to her as the score of a Little League game. Zero consequence to her life. Plus, their middle school conduct proved that they lacked the maturity to make any judgment about her at all. Vivian internalized an important lesson. People who lack standing don't get attention. Like your toxic boss's day-to-day unfair criticism about your work isn't actually a performance review. It's a control mechanism. Treat it accordingly. And this doesn't just change you at work. You bring this shift home with you. Vivian sure did. She stopped replaying the interactions of the day over and over and over in her head. She started having actual conversations with her husband again, not just venting about her coworkers. She stopped waking up at 3 a.m. running through what she could have said or done. The firewall didn't just protect her at work, it gave her her life back. This emotional firewall makes the Unbothered Protocol stick, because when you stop being available for everything thrown at you and you're intentional about what gets in, you have a lot less to be bothered by. Now, you have 4 pieces of the Unbothered Protocol in place right now. You know what you're dealing with, your mental model has shifted, your emotional investment is withdrawn, and your firewall is up. Now, this next piece is personal, because they didn't just go after your job. They went after you. Piece 5 is going to protect you and give you practical defenses when you need them. But if you skip the step, the puzzle's gonna fall apart. When you are unprotected in a toxic job, it changes you. One day you wake up and you don't even recognize yourself. You doubt yourself when you never did before. You're quiet in times that you would have spoken up. Your confidence has been demolished. In order to trap their target, the toxic workplace system systematically breaks you down, destroying who you were and leaving a shell of your former self. And it's easy for them to do this because your identity has always been created through your interactions with others. For instance, if you grew up being told that you were smart, you got good grades in school, and you were regularly praised for your intelligence, it became a part of your identity. It was true in the first place, but it was affirmed and it was made central to who you are through your interactions. But the interactions in a toxic work environment do not reflect reality. It's like being in one of those fun houses where they have all the crazy mirrors that distort you and they're all pointed at you at once. Because if they showed you who you really are, you would also see who they really are. In the meantime, the toxic people position themselves in front of the ego mirrors. You know, the ones that make you look really young, skinny, and hot? I wish I had one of those. This setup is why, when you are targeted, you think that there is nothing that you can do to change the setup, that there's nothing that you can do to stop everyone from seeing you the way that the toxic people want you to be seen. That perception is manufactured. It's a trick, just like the mirrors in that room. You can set up away from the wonky mirrors and reflect it back at them. This is how you get back to who you were before they got their hands on you. The best way to do this is by being too dumb to be offended. And if you just tensed up, there's a reason for that. The toxic workplace system makes you constantly prove yourself, that you're good enough, smart enough, hardworking enough. It takes your intelligence and it weaponizes it against you because you clock everything, the patterns, the subtle inferences, the subtext. But what if you didn't? Now, Vivian wasn't wild on this idea either, but she agreed to be too dumb to be offended the next time that one of her toxic coworkers made a snarky comment about her. Of course, she wasn't literally too dumb. She heard it, but she acted like she didn't. She didn't flinch, she didn't react. Actually, she pretended that her toxic coworker meant exactly what they said and not what they were implying. Now, 2 things happened when she did this. First, her toxic coworker had no idea what to do. She couldn't exactly correct the record and admit that she was being malicious. She didn't get the satisfaction of watching Vivian shut down. And I bet she knew that it altered the perception of the entire interaction for everybody in the room. Vivian could tell that she was pissed. So good thing I tell all my clients to practice keeping a straight face when they see the reaction because they're gonna need it. But the more important shift was for Vivian. When she pretended that she was too dumb to read the room, she changed the room. Now she had just gotten public praise, even if it wasn't her coworker's intention. She didn't want to melt into her chair and disappear. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't running through how she could have defended herself. Literally, the interaction ended right then for her. Though I like to think that it haunted her toxic coworker for the rest of her day and low-key ruined it. When toxic people at work weaponize their intelligence, being dumb becomes a power move. Now, another option Vivian had here was to turn the mirror on her toxic coworker. Your ability to shape meaning and construct a reality that benefits you is just as strong as your toxic coworkers. Now, you've spent this whole video inside the toxic workplace system, learning how it works. That knowledge is now yours, and knowledge in a system gives you power inside of it. The more that you see through it, the less it can touch you, and the more you can use it. The thing is, most people have no idea how to do this, but you will when you get the Toxic Job Survival Pack. Now, I shamelessly promote this because it has already changed the game for hundreds of people just like you who are stuck in a toxic job and sick of struggling in it. It walks you through how you can reduce the damage that it does to your career, become the person that toxic people actively avoid, and establish an infallible emotional firewall. You can get it by scanning the QR code on screen or go to toxicjobsurvival.com. Which brings us back to our puzzle. It's almost complete. You've shifted your mental model, cognitively quit, built your emotional firewall, and started taking back control of your identity. You might actually already notice a difference here, but there's one more piece left. And it's not just going to make you unbothered by a toxic job and stop it from being able to hurt you. It will position you to be untouchable at work. They will leave you alone entirely when you do this, because when toxic people can't get what they need from you, they stop coming for you. That's where the game changes completely. Your toxic job made you an easy target, and they did it on purpose. But that does not mean that you can't do anything about it. Remember earlier when we talked about what you would do if your wallet was stolen? Well, after it happened, there is also something else that you would probably do. You would take steps to prevent it from being stolen again. You wouldn't leave it on a table in a restaurant. You would get a bag that closes to make it harder to pickpocket. You wouldn't carry all your credit cards in it anymore. You would make yourself a difficult target for wallet snatchers so that they wouldn't try you again. In criminology, this is called victim precipitation. You are never to blame for being targeted, but there are a few things that make you an easy target. When you started adding layers to make stealing your wallet more difficult, you were doing something called target hardening. And you actually do this in all sorts of ways every day. You lock your front door, you don't walk alone down dark alleys at night, you don't walk with headphones on in full blast. You can also use target hardening at work to become a hostile target. And you already started this with the last piece. Because once toxic people stop being rewarded with your reaction, stop being able to manipulate you, and stop being able to get away with their toxic behavior, they stop trying you. Which means not only are you going to be less bothered, but you have less to be bothered about. Essentially, once you have assembled the Unbothered Protocol puzzle, it becomes self-reinforcing. You are no longer someone that the toxic workplace system can run on. You withdrew the fuel, you built a firewall, reclaimed your identity, and you hardened the target. The system is still there, but you're no longer available to power it. Now, this is where I hear a lot of people push back. Because you don't want to be hostile, aggressive, or toxic, but you don't need to be in order to become a hostile target. Actually, the more you know who you are and the more confidence you have in yourself, the easier it is. Vivian is proof. She went from feeling like a defenseless target to someone that her toxic coworkers actively avoided. The system didn't change. She did. Understanding how toxic people choose their targets is also essential to become unbothered, which you will be when you watch this video where I expose exactly how toxic people choose their targets and how to make sure you are never one of them again. I will see you there.